I'm Natalie Furlett. I'm the Director for Partnerships and Member Engagement with Campus Compacts. I also have the privilege of working with our community college network and thinking about all of the issues that are specific to being a community or technical institution. And this is one of those issues that we thought would be really interesting to have a nice conversation about. So the Pathways framework and survey is used to really think about students' interests and how you move that forward in the work. And so we have some examples to talk about today. And I'm going to pass it on to Sean Crossland to do some better introductions.
Cool. Thanks, Natalie. Hi, all. I'm Sean Crossland. I'm excited to be with you this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. I just updated my name to show that I am at Utah Valley University. I'm an assistant professor for higher education leadership, and I feel like I should caveat that with two things. One is that I spent a decade at Salt Lake Community College in the Thane Center for Service and Learning. Utah Valley University actually is a really kind of an interesting model where we call ourselves a dual mission institution. So we have a full community college component as a part of our institution. So I currently only teach in the graduate, I shouldn't say only, I teach in the graduate program. So I am, have been a couple years somewhat disconnected from community college life, but still very much near and dear to my heart. My dissertation research focused on community college, community engagement. So I am excited to talk with y'all about the pathways of public service and civic engagement. We call them the social impact pathways here at Utah Valley University. Do I have is that the right screen? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Got it. We call them, I just realized, sorry. Yeah, share the audio. This is the fun of Teams to Zoom. So we call them the social impact pathways here at Utah Valley University. One of the interesting things about this framework is that it's set up to be basically white labeled. So you'll hear different iterations of how the pathways are named. So for short, I just typically call them the pathways. Different institutions have given them, different name based on where they are, based on what they think will resonate most with their students. So I'm excited to be joined by Christina Lasorsa from College of DuPage, Suppan Parekh from Bellevue College, and Brianna Stapleton Welch from Madison College. I'm going to do just a quick overview of what we're going to do today. I'm going to share the overview, kind of give you an idea of how to differentiate when we talk about the pathways as a framework versus the pathways as a tool. And then we'll hear from each of the example institutions, talk a little bit about the successes, the challenges, and the future directions, and then open it up for questions if you all have questions that you would like to engage with. Because we spent so much time as a working group creating this video, I thought it was probably the best way to give the quick overview of the pathways of public service and civic engagement.
Welcome to the Pathways of Public Service and Civic Engagement.
These 6 pathways describe ways to contribute to the common good.
Community-engaged learning and research connects academics to community concerns.
Community organizing and activism involves, educates, and mobilizes individual and collective action.
Direct service works to address the immediate needs of individuals or a community.
Philanthropy donates funds from individuals or institutions to contribute to the public good.
Policy and governance participates in policymaking and public governance.
And social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility uses ethical private sector approaches to create market-oriented responses to social or environmental problems.
Think of the pathways as different colors in the spectrum of service, allowing us to choose from a range of activities to illustrate our own public service masterpiece. The pathways encompass different but interconnected, overlapping, and reinforcing actions.
Pathways are relevant at local, national, and international levels, and are not bound by geography nor topic.
For example, these are just a few ways to advance the issue of access to education. Issues addressed by any pathway can result in measurable community impact towards the common good.
The Pathways tool captures students' interests and predispositions in service. The tool surveys students and provides data that 1. Helps individual students by improving advising. When we have shared language to describe students' interests, it's easier to think about how to support their development.
2. Guides programming. With data about a whole cohort, we can tailor topics to students' interests and expand their experiences.
And 3. Enables longitudinal trend data for students collectively. We can follow attitudes about pathways and relative interest in specific issues over time, which could inspire changes in advising, programming, and policy across institutions.
Members of our international working group have used the tool in creative ways to make a real impact. Get in touch to learn more.
So I realized as I was preparing for this yesterday that link is actually broken. So I will put a link in the chat to the working group page. No, I just did that. I was doing it again.
Welcome to the
Okay. I promise I've done presentations before. So the working group that was referenced in that video currently consists of about 45 member organizations. Those are primarily institutions of higher education, but we do have a few network organizations and one state commission on service and volunteerism here in Utah. So primarily institutions of higher ed. And there are, if I remember right, about 12 community colleges. It's a great group. It's been fairly active for several years. We have about quarterly calls, and usually about once a year or 18 months we do a retreat. One of the really beneficial things about the working group is that it's very collaborative. So when institutions create resources or integrate the pathways into syllabi, there's a lot of sharing and getting to see examples of how other institutions are implementing the pathways. So the video talked about the pathways framework, and you saw these six pathways, and we really think of these as a heuristic for students thinking about the way that social change happens. So not that the important part is distinguishing between policy and governance and social entrepreneurship, for example, but that it gives students an idea of ways to impact change and ways that change happens. The tool that was referenced is a short survey that students complete. That I'll go through the results from that here in a second. It's primarily used as an advising instrument, so that students can see both where they have interest and where they have experience, and also maybe where they don't have as much experience or interest. Right? Again, the point is not to say this pathway is better than that pathway, or but to be really generative in ideas and conversations around social change and social impact. So this is what the results from that tool look like. So students, it usually takes about 10 minutes for the students to complete, 10 or 15 minutes. And it gives them their this readout that says, here are my top pathways by description, where I personally think I can create the most impact, and where I believe the most impact can be generated. So this right here is in itself is a really interesting conversation to have with students, where they see themselves making the most impact, and where more broadly they see potential for impact, and what that means, right? So in this example, I might inquire to the student if they see policy and governance as being the most impactful. Is that something that they might want to get more experience in, that they might want to have a better understanding of the way that they could get involved in policy and governance? And if not, why, right? That's also not a bad thing. It's not, again, to push students in any particular direction, but to give them some markers to look towards. The rest of the readout shows how they essentially how they score in each of the other pathways. So you can see experience and interest across each of the 6 pathways. So here's another flag that I might think about. Okay, you have no experience with social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility, but you have some interest. So maybe part of what we do in this conversation is figure out ways for the student to get some more experience with with social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility. Then it breaks them down by their activities. So it shows, based on the activities that they indicated that they're interested in. Again, that for this one, very, very high in community engaged learning and research. It's not often that these are, that these two are the same would indicate that they are really interested in more community engaged learning and research activities. And then the last part of it shows specific activities that they might be interested in and participating in. And at the end, this is something that can be useful. They can print their results. This takes them directly to a worksheet, a reflection worksheet that was developed by the working group to do a little bit more thinking around specific issues that they care about. And then this button is customizable by institution, so you can have it go to whatever page you want. A lot of folks have it go to the the kind of home page for the community engagement department. Some craft custom websites specific to students that have just taken the pathway. So this is that's the results page. It's not saved anywhere for the student to kind of recall. So one of the common questions that we get is if they can do a sort of pre-post, and that's something that that individual programs or faculty do on their own, right? It's not something that the tool is set up to handle a pre-post situation, and that's partly because of the institutional review board process and keeping it completely anonymous, that we're not collecting individual student data. The other thing that I wanted to just quickly reference before passing it on is that we have an active research project in process right now with a tentative book publishing about this time next year. It started off as a deep dive into thinking more about career options and details of career pathways for students that are engaging with this framework, and we're excited to be able to share more of that at the end of the year. I listed the research team here. I realized I should have put each of their institutions, because that's a fun marker as well. It's spread out very intentionally across the country, and you can see more of those details on the link. So I am going to pass it to Christina from College of DuPage to talk about how they use the pathways.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Let me get my screen pulled up here. Okay, so I am Christina LaSorsa. I am the interim manager and service learning coordinator at College of DuPage. We are located in Glen Ellen, Illinois. A little bit about College of DuPage. We are a chaparral. So if you don't know what that is, it's a road runner. And the history goes back that they had all these different sites that people were literally having to run about campus to. So we do still have satellite campuses, but our main campus is in Glen Ellen. We're 25 miles west of Chicago. We are the largest community college in the state, and we have the second largest population of students next to U of I Champaign. And something that may or may not be unique to you, our service learning program is in our career services office, which is under student affairs. So previously I've met with some folks that we're in student affairs and then shifted over to academic affairs, but that's where we are right now, although we heavily rely on, of course, our faculty on the academic side to support these initiatives. So a little bit about the Career Services Center. Being a community college, we serve our students, alumni, and community residents, while also working with businesses in the area to build partnerships for internships, service learning, and overall employment. So a big focus that we have is that career preparation. So we host webinars on a weekly basis. We are invited to a number of classes over the semester across several different disciplines, and we also bring our employers on campus. In addition, we do have that service learning program and the academic credit internship. So how we use the pathways model for our service learning program. Service learning primarily is run during the fall and spring semesters. Being that we are emerging from the pandemic after all that time of being on lockdown, our program certainly was impacted by it. So we are kind of rebuilding our service learning program to get that momentum going. But the summer semester has always been a little bit slower for us. We are those all the programs that typically use service learning may not even run over the summer break. We have about 7 champion faculty members utilizing service learning for this academic year. One of them is Shamli Angankar. So if you did see her name there on the research team, she is the one who introduced me to this several years ago, and we've been able to implement it. We require every service learning class to take this survey. So in our course selections, our faculty will have a disclaimer letting students know that it's a service learning course, that they will be required to complete 15 or 20 hours of service, but sometimes that's overlooked. So this survey tool was really beneficial to ease students into, hey, you've got some service to do. You've got to go out into the community. We're expecting you to expand your comfort zone and add this to what you already have going on. We do remind students that, the service learning is in lieu of, a large research project or a large presentation, but that initial hour requirement always freaks them out a little bit. So we use this survey to introduce to them what service is, the value in service, and have them really think about where they identify in service and what they think they can do. A lot of times students just think that they can just go out and volunteer and that's, and do direct service, which obviously is one of those pathways and primarily how we run service learning at COD. But there's so many other ways for students to get involved. And this survey really is that introductory to it. This last year, a group of our faculty have started a community of practice. So we are trying to expand service learning on our campus, but in the overall umbrella of civic engagement. So what does civic engagement look like on our campus? Who's engaged in civic engagement? Are they interested in using the service learning pedagogy? So that's been really exciting to be a part of this year. It really is drawing some momentum and bringing new faculty on board who will either participate in service learning or be able to identify a larger civic engagement initiative on our campus. And then we do a post survey that is a mock of this initial survey. Like Sean mentioned, there is not a pre and post option for this. So we thought it was really beneficial to have a better idea of what do students think they are interested in or might be interested in the beginning of the semester, and has their service impacted that in any capacity. So that's been really interesting and exciting. And we always hope for more information in those surveys and more participants. So hopefully we'll be able to drive that up with this spring semester and continue to do it to really get that strong data. Majority of the classes that are including service learning I have here are biology. So Shamli Angankar is our environmental biology instructor, our human services class, English, early childcare education, and then we're over in healthcare. We're in radiography and sonography. Prior to the pandemic, we had about 20 courses utilizing service learning. So like I said, we're rebuilding that up just because so many people got used to shifting gears and making service still important in their class. So hopefully that will continue to grow throughout our time building back. For our internship program, we have an academic internship program. So we do support students in their search process, but we only track data on our students who are earning academic credit. This can be during the fall, spring, and summer semester. And then we utilize a grant through the Illinois Board of Higher Education that reimburses employers at 50% of the wage paid to those students. So we require them to also take this survey to have a better understanding of where they fit into the world of service, slowly start introducing that. So sometimes our students are in a service learning class trying to explore what they want to do, and some are like, yep, I know exactly what I want to do. I'm going to go into an internship. But this grant opportunity allows us to kind of reel them in a little bit better, and have them identify, could service be a career of interest of mine in the future? There really is so much opportunity for us to use this survey on our campus, especially with specific to academic credit internships. But right now we're just using it for those students whose employer is benefiting from the grant. A lot of our internships that students will do is marketing, graphic design, computer science, interior design. And then we do have some of those career and technical programs such as horticulture, culinary, and hospitality that have that internship requirement. So there is, like I mentioned, there's tons of opportunity for growth for us. So the Career Services Center oversees our presidential scholarship recipients who are required to complete 20 hours of service in their first year. This is typically our traditional students entering right from high school. So we have not used it yet, but it's something that I want to do to provide to them. Often they're very overwhelmed by, having to do service in general as part of, keeping their scholarship. But that's where we're hoping to grow that next level. It's about 80 students a year, and that presidential scholarship provides them a 2-year full ride. So that will be a really good group of students for us to introduce this to. I had mentioned the academic credit internship program. So across campus, that's about 100 students a semester. It is used for their elective credits. So that's why it's a little bit smaller. I'm sure we have more students doing internships, but we're not able to capture that. Sean had mentioned, and we all know that the survey is used for advising. So in our career preparation, that's a way that we also want to move this forward. We have leadership programs and clubs and organizations on our campus, which is another great market for us to expand this to. So hopefully, as our community of practice continues to grow, we will gain more momentum and have more supporters utilizing this survey. And then finally, our student employment. So we have about 250 to 300 student employees on campus. So that is another market for us. But again, as most of us know, we might be wearing several hats or short staffed. And this isn't just, hey, take this survey. There's so much more to it, and to really make it beneficial for our students and have them understand the value in service and taking this survey. So we have a long ways to go, but we're super excited for it. And that is short and sweet from me. On here, I do have the service learning email. So if you do want to chat more, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to chat anytime. And of course, we'll have time for Q&A after. So that's all that I have. Thanks so much.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to talk. So my name is Supin. I use he, him pronouns. I am the associate director for service learning and community engagement at Bellevue College. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we call our avenues for civic impact. So like Sean said, we have taken we've taken the Pathways name and changed it. I'll be really clear. The biggest reason is we use guided pathways. And I was very quickly told, you can't bring something else in that uses the word pathways. So avenues for civic impact it is for us. So let's start with who we are. By the way, this is a picture of a biology faculty with students who did a service project, and they're presenting on that project as a part of our quarterly showcase symposium that we put on. So Bellevue College is the largest community technical college in Washington State, and we're the 3rd largest higher ed institution in Washington. So we are just east of Seattle. So Seattle is here, and this is Bellevue. So our main campus is this one here. We currently have this many FTE and this many people enrolled. And when I say currently, I mean as of yesterday. Check the data on it. 50% of our students are from this service district. So the service district is a fairly packed suburb area and ex-urban area, but then going to, so these are the Cascade Mountains here. And if you're not familiar, the Cascade Mountains have some of the largest, tallest mountains in the country, like Mount Rainier. So this is really rural out here. The remaining 50% of our students come from Seattle, which is very urban, comes from this area down here, which is also quite urban in its field, very, very racially and economically diverse, and then of course, online and international students. We have a bunch of different kinds of programs, including bachelor's degrees, and we work, my office, my program works closely with across lots of them. So some of the non-transfer associates, some of the transfer associates, bachelor's degrees. And I just like to throw this in there. So Bellevue College is typically ranked the best college to come to nationwide if you are on the autism spectrum. We have people who come from all over the country and the world to our college because our services and support are really good. So as I said, I am the Associate Director of Service Learning Community Engagement with the RISE Learning Institute at the college. RISE is on the academic side of the house. And I like to say that we are the experiential learning side. And we do a lot of different things. So our Career Center is a part of that. We also, and that includes our academic internships and our job fairs and all of that. We are in the process of bringing in a challenge course, like a low-rope challenge course. And that will be kind of a good match for our maker space as well, which is a lot more tech and like cosplay and costumes as well. We have a couple of cohort programs. So we have our Navigators program, which supports those who are neurodiverse. We have our STEM to STEM program. And then we have our 3 faculty-facing programs. So community engagement, civic education, formally service learning, project-based learning, and undergraduate research. So I manage the community engaged and civic education program, also called CC. So if I call it CC, it's because I don't feel like saying the entire name. And here's a very loose vision, is that all students will experience and grow from education that is community-centered, justice-oriented, and civically active. So we support in traditional service learning, but we do a whole bunch of other things. We manage a lot of the civic stuff for the college. We really promote anything that involves kind of bringing in community. And we also do programs like this. This was our economics program chair catching a big salmon out at Pike Place Market for our 2-day immersion, which is a deep dive that I planned into the topic of salmon for faculty and staff and entirely in the community. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about the avenues, again, the avenues for civic impact and how we use them. So I'll be honest, we've struggled a little bit, and we can talk about that a little later when it comes to the challenges for community colleges, or maybe for us. I think probably the biggest challenge is that I'm a program of 1, and so there's only so much I can do. So my hope was to try to get it out there to start with, and then kind of encourage and grow it from there. So we do have a website. Here's a QR code in case you want to just quickly, and go to it. I'll put this link in the chat afterward as well. This is probably the most visible place that it is. So halfway down, we've got this little piece that talks about taking a diagnostic. This is the tool, the survey tool, and we have the one that will capture the data, which is the 18 and over. But because we have a large running start population, we also have this under 18, which is essentially the demonstration version. We also have it here and here, and then we have we've been working on, the Pathways team developed one that's for faculty and staff. So they can take that one. So we actually do have quite a few faculty who will take it, just to get a feel for, is this the sort of thing I want to put into my class? And then if they scroll down further, they get to 4 tabs. And the second tab is the avenues of civic impact. So we have the proper name for it here, some details about what it is, courses that could possibly use it. And then students or anybody can click on these to kind of get more information and examples of how these might appear in their time at the college, but as well as outside the college. The other thing about this I want to say is that every fall or every other fall, we will do a campus-wide survey on voter and civic engagement. And the very last page of that, when they're finished with it, will actually when they're finished with it, it'll actually automatically take them to the Civic Impact website. So for those people who were like, well, one survey was not enough, they have the possibility of taking a second survey here, but at least they can then also go down and understand the framework as well. So the other place that we've really worked on tried to work on using is class integration. And the biggest way is through our Changemakers course. We finally got an actual, we've been having it as a special topics class for a while. We finally got proper course designation earlier this year, so we're very excited about that. This is a course that's offered once a year and was entirely developed as a result of this this framework, and it integrates the framework entirely through. So the course is all about how do I search for careers or find careers in something that to make a difference in an issue that matters to me. And so one of the things they do is they start right away with like an assignment like this, where they have to take the tool and then they have to reflect on the results of the tool. And this is probably a little bit old. I need to change these questions to match a little bit more of the current version, but we have this at the beginning, and then there are 6 weeks of the quarter. Each week is focused on one of the pathways or the avenues. So it's one lecture about it, and then they get to hear from people who are working in the community in that area. And then they actually have to do a small project at the end. So if they're really interested in philanthropy, they would do a small, like a fundraiser. If they're really interested in social entrepreneurship, they would create a business plan, that sort of thing. And at the end of the quarter, they do this again, but they'll do the demonstration version kind of as a post, and then they're asked to reflect on how they've changed over the quarter. I've also gone into courses and I've done specific workshops around this as well. So like STEM and social justice, but really looking at applying the framework to it. So these are really a lot more about utilizing the framework than the tool. What I really wish we could do is I really want to create a certification in community leadership that is based on this. So students doing the certification would take the Changemakers course as a way to start, but then as they go, they might take, like if they're interested in activism and community organizing, they would take an activism course. If they're interested in like the community engaged learning and research, they would they would take a field methods course, things like that to add to it, and they would have a capstone project. This is something that has been on my list for a while that I'm very excited about, and I know that some of our community partners are excited about it too. But as a single person doing this work, it is very hard to come up with the time. The last thing is for me, of course, is I'd want to really build it in to our CC courses, the way that you've just heard being done at the College of the DuPage, so we usually have at any given quarter about 15 to 20 faculty doing this. The problem is that we already asked them, we don't require it, but we asked them to do a pre and a post survey for our own benefit and for their benefit. And so adding another survey, another tool to it might be more than we're allowed, that we feel comfortable. So we're trying to figure out what the right way is, but that would be my vision, is to build this in, because we're hitting a ton of students across all of our divisions, prof tech, bachelor's programs, non-transfer and transfer. The last couple of things that I'd like to say, but here's my information, is that we would love to be able to use it for career advising. We just haven't figured out yet how best to do it. Our career advisors feel so pulled in different directions right now. They're like, it's a wonderful idea, but no. Another option is to try to build it into our student programming side of things, but that side that does service hasn't been existing for a while. So things like, like I've thought about, why don't we build it into the beginning of a volunteer fair? So when someone registers for a volunteer fair, they also take this, things like that. So there's stuff that we're pondering, but we haven't quite got to it yet.
Hello. All right, I'm going to pull up my slides and then I will begin. My name is Brianna Stapleton Welch, and I am a student program advisor at Madison Area Technical College. Our marketing department calls us Madison College, and we are based in Madison, Wisconsin. So just a little bit about our institution. We have 7 campuses throughout southern Wisconsin. The map shows the district that we cover as part of the Wisconsin Technical College system. We have almost 32,000 of our duplicated head count, and 7,000 approximately of those students are full-time enrollments. We have a lot of different diplomas, but most of the students that I'm interacting with in my work are part of that 33.5% that are in our liberal arts transfer program. So their intent is to transfer to get a bachelor's degree at another institution at some point. Although that's not everybody I work with, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the students that participate in our programming. My primary job responsibilities include advising the Student Volunteer Center organization. So I put the mission for that organization that was developed by the student leaders up on the slide here. And the Volunteer Center, as well as all of our other student organizations, are part of the Center for Student Life at Madison College. So we support student organizations and clubs. We support our new student orientation programs. We facilitate the commencement ceremony. So right now outside of my office, it's a huge mess of caps, gowns, service cords, all that good stuff. And then we also just provide general student leadership support and student engagement beyond the classroom throughout the year through a variety of programs and activities. And this student organization, the relationship that I have with that as their advisor, I support the student leaders on the board. There's a board of 8 student employees who plan all of the programming and activities for that student organization. They're the decision makers. I'm simply the advisor. So they decide how to use their budget. They decide what's going to happen each year, how to market it, what their goals are. But I started implementing the Pathways of Public Service as a way to train and support the 8 student leaders on that board. So I'm sharing that context because we don't use it on a very large scale. It's with a very small group of student leaders, but I'll share a little bit more about why we chose that and how we go forward. So those student leaders, they are student employees who are running that student organization and implementing the programs. Like I mentioned before, most of them are from the liberal arts transfer program, but occasionally I do have student employees who are coming from some of our technical diplomas, including graphic design, administrative professional, culinary, business management, hospitality. And then our participants in our programming come from all kinds of programs across the college, many different students involved. We also have a School of Academic Advancement that offers high school completion programs and language learning programs that bridge people into our degree programs. Those students are welcome to participate. You do not have to be a degree credit student to participate in student organization programs. And then another huge group that we've seen growing in our participation are students in our early college programs. So they are dual enrolled in high school and an associate's degree program at the same time. And I see a lot of those students coming to engage with us because their high school might have graduation requirements of volunteer hours that they are completing through us while they're also doing most of their coursework at Madison College. So that's the group that we're working with right now. So these student leaders that I mentioned, when a new student leader is hired to work with the Volunteer Center, each one of them has a different programming responsibility based on the strategic plan that the students create each year. They have to go through an onboarding course. And so I'm doing some of that in person, but they also go through several modules on Blackboard to just get themselves all with the same background information about how does our budget work? What is our role in the institution? And part of that onboarding is about the Pathways of Public Service. So I'm primarily using that as a training tool to help these student leaders think about all of the different types of programs they can create, because
direct service might not be the thing that engages everybody. So that's what, and really direct service kind of is a lot of what we tend to do, because if a student is applying to be an employee with the volunteer center, that's probably their interest. They've probably done some of that before, but we can think bigger, and there might be some other ways to engage. So this is a screenshot from that Blackboard module. They watched the video that Sean showed earlier, and then I have them complete a reflection worksheet that is, I got that from the Pathways work group, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We borrowed that from another school, and the students think about which pathway was the most interesting for them. It also asks them to identify a topic that's really important to them. So for example, this year I have 2 student leaders on the board who are really passionate about addressing intimate partner violence. And so they have thought about ways to address that through direct volunteering, through some philanthropy. We have a guest speaker coming in tomorrow from an organization that's going to talk about how to have a healthy relationship. So, you know, they can take a topic they're passionate about and address that through multiple pathways throughout the year with different engagement programs. Some of the other things that students have thought about. So, you know, for a student who is really stuck on direct service, that's the thing they think is going to engage the most people. We use some of that to think about, okay, what are the barriers to direct service for our students? And so how can, if you're going to plan a volunteer activity, what's that going to look like? Can we offer transportation? Can they bring their kids along? What are some of the things that we can do to make that more accessible? We also have students who've thought about policy and governance. And so that might be they might hold a workshop for other students about how to effectively contact an elected official about issues that you care about. Or maybe they host a panel with people who are young leaders in local government. We do have students who are interested in community organizing and activism. So they might hold awareness raising events or encourage students to get involved in community groups that are organizing around various topics. So follow through, they do this at the beginning of the time that they're hired. Typically students are with me for about a year in their leadership roles. Some might continue. Usually the longest I'm working with a particular student leader is about 2 years at the college. And they all do this in their onboarding. And then we devote some time during our weekly board meetings to just different leadership training workshops. And so one of those board meetings, we do focus on the pathways of public service to talk about everyone's results from that survey. And each of the student leaders can see, oh, I thought we all were into direct service, but it turns out so-and-so really is more of a policy and governance type of person. And so the types of programs they will be planning might be a little bit different than what I anticipated. It just leads to some good conversation and awareness of what each of them wants to do with their leadership opportunities throughout the semester. I'll also share another piece of our use of the pathways that was a bit of a surprise to me. It was an unexpected result. So like I mentioned, a lot of our students are planning to transfer to a bachelor's institution at some point. And we did a little bit of touring and visiting of some other institutions this year. We visited UW-Madison's Morgridge Center for Public Service. That is the most common institution that our students transfer to. We were going because we were trying to check out their space. We're hoping to get our own space on campus, and we were thinking about layout and design and what that would look like. But during that visit, the Morgridge Center student employees were talking about how they use the pathways of public service to guide their programming. And our students go, oh yeah, we know what that is. We talk about that too. And then we also attended a student leadership conference at a small private college in Wisconsin this winter. And they use the pathways of public service. And suddenly the student employees were saying, oh, okay, this is not just us that's using that, right? And I mentioned that in the training, but I don't, it's cool to see them have that common language. And I see that as a tool that can be beneficial, because if a student is engaged in public service in the time that they're with Madison College, and I know that they're transferring, I try to connect them with wherever that happens at the institution where they're going. So we might look up what that website is together, or I might connect them, okay, if this is an advisor or a staff member you can talk to about this when you transfer, if you want to continue to look into that for student employment or student leadership. And having that common language with, I think Sean mentioned there were 45 institutions in that Pathways work group. I think transferring is a really intimidating experience that many students talk about. So if there's something that can feel familiar or feel like common language and help them pave that bridge to the next step of their educational journey, I think that's a added benefit that I didn't anticipate about using the pathways. And that's pretty much it for us. So I'll turn it back to Sean to lead us in the next step.
Wonderful. Thanks all for the thoughtful details about your programs. I will welcome questions from the audience regarding anything that we've talked about or anything that we haven't talked about. We have a few prepared questions to kind of to talk through some more dialogue, but certainly welcome to put questions in the chat or raise your hand and unmute and ask the questions. We would be more than happy to answer them. One thing I thought to clarify before we jump into the questions is that it is not a requirement that you are a part of the working group to use the Pathways framework. So I realized as Brianna said that, I was like, oh, I don't know if I know this small liberal arts college in Wisconsin, right? Which is part of the fun, is that we uncover, more examples of people using it in different ways every day. So it's certainly not like an expectation or a requirement that you join the working group. It is encouraged and there's tons of benefits to it. But and it looks like we have a question in the chat, Brianna, for you about selecting your student leaders.
Yes, I can briefly respond to that. So we have a student employment system, Handshake, and so they apply in Handshake. I post all the roles there. We do interviews. Typically the interviews are conducted by myself and one of the current student leaders on the board. And then we don't have a ton of applicants. So typically if the student, and they're often students who've participated in our programs in the past. So I mention at all of those programs, hey, we're hiring. If you're interested, apply. And so a lot of them come from students who've been involved as a participant, and then they become a student leader in the future.
Excellent. So one question that we thought would be a fun one is hearing from each of you kind of advice or key considerations around how folks can think about implementing the Pathways framework at the community college context specifically, because this is a community college focused group. So kind of thinking about if you were offering advice to somebody who was just thinking about implementing the Pathways, what might be some things for them to think about relative to the community college perspective?
I can go. I mean, I think this is community college or 4-year, but make sure that you have a faculty member or find a champion faculty member who wants to get behind it, who is excited about it and can share with their peers. We've learned the only way to do really anything with student engagement is through our faculty, through our classrooms and things like that. So that is always top of mind for us at COD. And I was in the boat that the faculty member brought it to me. And then we're able to spread it across our campus. So yeah, faculty are where it's at.
I think for me, it's thinking about how we're utilizing this tool and this framework for the different kinds of students that we have. And so one of the things that I often encourage, at least with the working group, is how is this going to work for our English language learners? How is this going to work for our neurodivergent students? Right? So students for whom being able to see this like large survey tool and see this terminology that can sometimes feel a little jargony, how are we breaking beyond that to make this as accessible as possible? And so I would say that if you're going to utilize this, find some folks on your campus who do work with student populations that may see barriers to understanding, and work with them on how do we translate this to something that is more accessible for that student group. Oh, it's echoey and staticky from my end. Oh, sorry.
Brianna, any advice?
I agree with Christina and that the faculty connection would be really important. We don't have that. We've struggled to have that at Madison College. And so I think that when I mentioned my example, we have a very limited use of it in the Center for Student Life. And I think there are faculty who are doing things. I get referrals from students all the time. My instructor assigned a service learning project for my course. Can you help me find a way to do this in the community? So I'm meeting with that student, and I, have casually connected with some of those instructors, but they don't have the capacity to connect with us on a more formal level. So I think if you have that, that would make the use of the model much more sustainable at your institution.
That made me think of just a few other examples that might be interesting or relevant for folks of how folks are using the pathways framework. Suppan mentioned exploring using it in a first year seminar. There's actually an institution that uses it as part of their new student orientation. It's a small private liberal arts school, so it's we're talking enrollment classes of 150 or 200, but they use it with every incoming freshman as part of orientation, right? So they're setting the tone of the college experience with this shared language and framework, which is an interesting model for sure. There's another example where the courses are actually coded in the catalog using one or more of the pathways. So not just having a service learning designation, but having this is a service learning class, and you're going to engage with community organizing and activism and or policy and governance, right? So giving students the menu and the opportunity to really opt into to more of these experiences. I think a takeaway there, and hopefully from what you heard from each of our presenters, is that there's no wrong way to implement the pathways, right? We saw a range of examples in terms of how it's being implemented. And then one of the kind of leading into one of the questions that you all might share around is like, what might help you in addition to faculty champions and some of the other things that you've described, what might help you in your current challenges of implementing the pathways? What could that look like?
I can start with some of our challenges. So I think having a broader definition of service in general at your institution, or getting on the same page. I think even within our Center for Student Life, some of the advisors have different definitions of service or ideas of what counts and what doesn't, as do different instructors who are assigning some of those service learning projects that I mentioned. Another challenge with that, so we are a certifying institution through the President's Volunteer Service Award, through Points of Light and AmeriCorps, and they have some pretty strict definitions about what types of service count for the hours that count towards those awards, some of which don't align with what is included in the Pathways to Public Service. And so I think that we could have some internal reflection as an institution about how we redefine and expand that, and think about who's creating these definitions, and what do the students even agree with it. Someone mentioned a little bit of the jargony aspect of some of the pathways of public service. Related to that, our marketing department, you have to have a web page that refers to the pathways of public service as part of being in the working group to connect students to the information in the survey, and our marketing department renamed the webpage because they didn't like it. They just wanted to call it Ways to Serve. And so that's another little barrier, right? How do we I want to acknowledge the work that's been developed by Stanford and now implemented and with support by Campus Compact, but sometimes that's not the language that's going to connect the most with the audience.
Just to echo Brianna, the same thing at CUD. We are such a large institution. It's really challenging to know who's doing what and how do they identify it. And civic engagement is this big umbrella, and service learning just fits underneath it as a small piece. So that's where that community of practice with those faculty will be huge with moving forward. So we hope to survey all of our faculty coming back for the fall term to say, how do you identify, or how do you define civic engagement? What do you do in your class? Have you, had support from the college, and what do you need? So we just have a better understanding of what's happening, so we can make it a stronger program.
From my side, and I hope I'm not still staticky. I apologize if I am a little bit. Okay, new computer. I don't know. I think the challenge is, and this is true across all institutions, we are all overworked, and everybody is in their own little lane. And I care deeply about this work, but it's a lot to get other people to care deeply about it when they have all of their other things, and including faculty who have to teach so much content in such a short period of time in like a quarter setting. It's just, I think that, you know, Christina's right, getting a faculty champion, someone, I think it was Christina that said that, you know, to kind of go along with me. At least there's someone else who can bring the faculty along, and I can work on the staff. But really, how do we get this to be of interest to people? And that is an area that I continue to struggle with.
We've got time for maybe one more question if folks have one. Okay, I think that means that we answered all questions. Everybody is ready to take the Pathways framework and go forth at their institutions. And okay, well, rather than fill in space, I'm sure I could talk more, but maybe this is a good spot to stop and pass it back to you, Natalie.
Well, thank you all so much. This is a part of a larger group of webinars we're doing. Sorry, I'm trying to get my mouse died while we were talking, and I'm trying to get the link. It's just not cooperating. Anyways, we're so excited to be able to, you know, talk specifically about community college issues and things that are happening that specifically affect two-year technical community colleges. And thank you all so much for spending some time talking about this particular pathway conversation. Our next conversation is with Josh Young, who is on this call as well on May 22nd, talking about the Civic scorecard that he has developed and how he's using that at his institution, Miami-Dade. So I just put the link in the chat if folks would like to join us for that one as well. So thank you all so much. And I also just want to acknowledge Shaquan McDowell, who's on this call as well, who's our member engagement coordinator. So he and I are both here to support our community college network however we can. So please feel free to reach out to us in the future if you need anything. So thank you all so much.